The voters were split. Conservatives supported the Vietnam War and were repelled by the Black Power movement. Another group were the Young Americans, who did not believe that American involvement in Vietnam was a just cause and wanted peace. Robert F. Kennedy, who was the most likely Democratic nominee for the presidency, was assassinated June 5, 1968. The election was left with three major candidates. The Democrats chose Vice President Hubert Humphrey. The American Independent Party was represented by unhappy, pro-segregationist Southern Democrat George Wallace. And for the Republicans, former Vice President Richard Milhous Nixon. Nixon, a moderate Republican, promised to return to states' rights and law and order, appealing to the silent majority of Americans for support. One of Nixon's strongest followers was Republican Senator Strom Thurmond, who helped him win the nomination in the South. The result was the victory of Nixon to the presidency and the last national election for Hubert Humphrey. In the 1972 election, Nixon took the entire South, the first modern Republican candidate to do so. Although Nixon would leave office in disgrace 2 years later, his victory set the precedent for future Republican presidential candidates, starting in 1980 with the former governor of California.
This is the issue of this election. Whether we believe in our capacity for self-government or whether we abandon the American Revolution and confess that a little intellectual elite in a far distant capital can plan our lives for us better than we can plan them ourselves.
Hollywood contract actor Ronald Reagan, whose most notable acting achievements were appearing as the Gipper in Knute Rockne and losing his legs in King's Row, began his political life as a Democratic follower of Franklin Roosevelt and the New Deal, but became disillusioned with the party in the 1950s, and his Republican allegiance grew throughout the 1960s. Reagan believed in the ideas of states' rights and local government, which led him to oppose the Civil Rights Act of 1964 and the Voting Rights Act of 1965. He first came to prominence at the 1964 Republican National Convention when he condemned the welfare state in a speech for Goldwater that was publicly televised. Political success grew rapidly from there, leading him to believe he could beat Nixon in 1968 for the Republican presidential nomination. He lost, but tried again against Gerald Ford in 1976 and was defeated again. By 1980, Reagan won the election by focusing on receiving the votes of the southern states. The only states Reagan did not win were West Virginia and Georgia. In his 1984 re-election, Reagan would sweep the entire South. A strong supporter of Reagan was South Carolina Republican Senator Strom Thurmond, who would become the president pro temp of the Senate until he retired in 2003. In his first inaugural address, Reagan condemned the actions of the previous Democratic presidents, saying,
"The economic ills we suffer have come upon us over several decades. They will not go away in days, weeks, or months, but they will go away. They will go away because we, as Americans, have the capacity now, as we've had in the past, to do whatever needs to be done to preserve this last and greatest bastion of freedom. In this present crisis, government is not the solution to our problem. Government is the problem."
His solution to the economic problem was to cut taxes and increase military spending. He also cut spending for food stamp programs, Medicare, Medicaid, and job training programs, deciding instead to spend money on military programs such as the Strategic Missile Defense System, playfully coined the Star Wars program. He also objected to affirmative action programs and deregulated environmental safety laws and industries, including the Fairness Doctrine in television, which forced stations to air both viewpoints on an issue. The actions of Reagan made him both a popular and divisive president. The shadow of Reagan has been felt in numerous facets of American politics since, through the administrations of George H.W. Bush, Bill Clinton, and George W. Bush.
There's an old saying in Tennessee, I know it's in Texas, probably in Tennessee, that says, "Fool me once, shame on you. If fool me, we can't get fooled again."